In this video, I'm going to explain about subtopic 11.2 types of immune response. So the learning objective for this subtopic is to outline humoral and cell-mediated immune response. So both humoral and cell-mediated immune response occur simultaneously when our body is infected with viruses or pathogens or bacteria. For humoral immune response, it involves productions of antibody by plasma cell, and for cell-mediated immune response, it involves activation of cytotoxic T cell. So nanti kita akan go through each of these immune response and macam mana humoral immune response activated and macam mana cell-mediated immune response activated. So before we start, first we will go through the meaning of MHC molecule, major histocompatibility complex, and also antigen presenting cells. So MHC molecules are a collection of cell surface glycoprotein encoded by a family of gene. So basically apa yang MHC buat ialah MHC are molecules that bind to fragments of pathogens ataupun antigen fragments, dan kemudian dia akan display them on the cell surface to be recognized by appropriate T cells. So kamu boleh anggap dia macam protein yang akan display antigen on the surface of our cell. So there are two main classes of MHC. We have class 1 MHC that is found on almost all nucleated cell. And for class 1 MHC, it facilitates antigen binding to cytotoxic T cell. Kemudian kita ada class 2 MHC which can be found on antigen presenting cells such as macrophage, dendritic cell and B cells. And for MHC class 2, they will facilitate antigen binding to helper T cell. So basically class 1 MHC antigen yang mereka present itu nanti kemudiannya akan bind dengan cytotoxic T cell, itu untuk class 1 MHC. Kalau class 2 MHC yang boleh dijumpai on the surface of antigen presenting cell, mereka akan bind dengan helper T cell. Okay, mereka akan bind dengan helper T cell. Okay, so antigen presenting cells are cells that can display antigen on the surface using class 2 MHC. So macrophage and dendritic cell engulf pathogen by phagocytosis. Kemudian mereka akan degrade it, break down the pathogen, dan kemudian display antigen fragments using class 2 MHC molecules on the cell surface to helper T cell. For B cell, they will take in few foreign molecules by receptor-mediated endocytosis. So as you learned previously, on the surface of B cell itu kita ada Y-shape receptor. So pathogen itu akan bind to Y-shape receptor ini, dan kemudian B cell ini akan internalize the pathogen, break it down, kemudian present ataupun display the antigen fragment on their class 2 MHC, di mana activated helper T cell will then bind to the displayed antigen. Now we will look at the outline for humoral immune response and cell-mediated immune response. So di sini kita akan tengok macam mana ataupun apa yang activated kita punya humoral immune response dan apa yang activate kita punya cell-mediated immune response. So when our body is infected with viruses, pathogens or bacteria, first we have our antigen presenting cell such as macrophage and dendritic. This cell will engulf the bacterium. Mereka akan makan lah. Kamu boleh anggap dia macam makan bakterium itu. Kemudian epitope ataupun antigen determinants ataupun antigen fragment will be presented on the macrophage membrane ataupun cell surface of the macrophage via a class 2 MHC molecule. So mereka present lah, as you can see from the diagram besides it. Kemudian antigen receptor of helper T cell will bind to the epitope presented by the macrophage. Kemudian helper T cell akan menggunakan CD4 protein to stabilize the binding between helper T cell and also the macrophage. Okay. The binding between the helper T cell and the macrophage will promote secretion of cytokine. So cytokine from both the macrophage, so macrophage akan secrete cytokine, kita punya helper T cell pun akan secrete cytokine juga. So cytokine from both the macrophage, antigen presenting cell ini, dan kita punya helper T cell ini will stimulate our helper T cell untuk proliferate and differentiate. Proliferate maksudnya increase in number lah. Differentiate, acquire specific function. So cytokine from both the macrophage and helper T cell will stimulate our helper T cell to proliferate and differentiate to become activated helper T cell and memory helper T cell. So sekarang kita ada activated helper T cell. So activated helper T cell ini, what it will do is it will circulate throughout our body and dia akan cari sel yang present antigen yang sama. Okay, sel yang present antigen yang sama. So at the same time, same antigen might bind to antigen receptor on the surface of B cell. So macam saya cakap tadi, B cell kita ada Y-shaped receptor on the surface of B cell. So pathogen akan bind to that Y-shaped receptor, kemudian B cell akan internalize the antigen by endocytosis, dan kemudian dia akan present the antigen fragment by using the class 2 MHC. So activated helper T cell yang detect this same antigen, mereka akan bind to this B cell lah yang present this same antigen. So activated helper T cell will bind with B cell presenting the same antigen. It must be the same antigen. Kalau dia different antigen, this activated helper T cell tidak boleh bind lah. Dia mesti presenting the same antigen. So when bind, activated helper T cell will secrete cytokine to activate the B cell to proliferate and differentiate. Okay. So B cell akan proliferate, macam saya cakap tadi, proliferate is increase in number, differentiate is acquire specific function. Okay, so stimulated by both antigen and cytokine, the B cell proliferate and differentiate into memory B cell and antibody secreting plasma cell. So plasma cell ini akan buat antibodies. So these antibodies will interfere with specific antigen lah. Mereka akan interfere with specific antigen. And memory B cells ini will be responsible for secondary immune response. So any memory cells produced during activation of humoral and cell-mediated immune response akan terlibat dalam secondary immune response. So antibodies do not directly kill pathogens, but by binding to antigen, they interfere with pathogen activity or mark pathogen in various way for inactivation or destruction. So antibody, mereka tidak boleh directly bunuh kita punya pathogens lah. What they can do is they will interfere with the pathogen activity. Okay, they will interfere with the pathogen activity. So menyebabkan patogen itu susah untuk divide ataupun memudahkan sel-sel lain dalam badan kita untuk capture ataupun tanda mark this pathogen to be destroyed later. Okay. Okay, next kita akan tengok cell-mediated immune response. So in the cell-mediated immune response, cytotoxic T cell use toxic proteins to kill cell infected by viruses or ada intracellular pathogens before pathogens fully mature. To become active, cytotoxic T cells require signals from activated helper T cell and interaction with antigen-presenting cell such as B cells. So basically apa yang paragraf ini cakap ialah, bila badan kita diserang dengan virus, not only B cells will present kita punya antigen, other cells in our body will also be infected with pathogens lah. Other cells in our body will also be infected with pathogen. So untuk kita activate kita punya cell-mediated immune response, we will need secretion of cytokines from activated helper T cell. So if you remember from previous slide, this slide, So activated helper T cell bila dia bind with B cell, dia akan secrete cytokine, dan cytokine ini activate kita punya B cell to proliferate and differentiate kan. These cytokines will also activate kita punya cytotoxic T cell untuk kita punya cell mediated immune response. So cytokine that is produced by the activated helper T cell will also activate kita punya cytotoxic T cell and stimulate it to proliferate and differentiate into memory cytotoxic T cell and activated cytotoxic T cell. So fragment of foreign protein produced in infected host cell associate with class 1 MHC and are displayed on the cell surface where they can be recognized by activated cytotoxic T cell. Okay. So sel-sel biasa yang infected with pathogen ini, mereka pun akan present antigen fragment on their cell surface by using class 1 MHC. Dan bila mereka present these antigen fragments on their cell surface by using the class 1 MHC, activated cytotoxic T cell yang akan bind to this infected cell. Okay, activated cytotoxic T cell yang akan bind to this infected cell, and the binding is stabilized with CD8 protein. Okay, after they bind, after the activated cytotoxic T cell bind, it will release perforin, which will form pores in the infected cell, and also release granzyme, which is an enzyme that break down protein. This granzyme will initiate apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. So basically, bila activated cytotoxic T cell ini bind to infected cell, what happen is they release perforin and granzyme, and this will cause the infected cell to die. Okay, jadi mati, jadi rosak lah. Okay, dirosakkan. So the death of the infected cell not only deprive the pathogen of a place to multiply, but also expose cell contents to circulating antibody which mark release antigen for disposal. So bila kita destroy this infected cell, there is no longer space for the pathogen to divide ataupun to multiply. Okay, so itu adalah overview for humoral and cell mediated immune response.